Some of the most atrocious acts that I believe we ever witness are due to what Buddhists and Taoists call the hungry ghost phenomenon. This is almost like an attachment on a person, in a person, and it causes such greed and lust and desire that it ends up overtaking that person. And if you've ever known anybody with hungry ghost attachment, it's intense. It's intense to be with them intimately, especially if it is of an adult nature and their appetite can never be filled. And then when it starts to veer into depravity, all of a sudden it knows no bounds. This is what I believe a hellscape actually is. Because when you are working with somebody that cannot be satiated, there is no limit. Literally, figuratively. And the lengths that they will go to are all consuming. And this is what we observe with P Diddy. If you have been following the cases, what you'll find is that the people who are coming forward to sue him are painting stories independently of almost this supervillain type of person. I mean, it's shocking. I just recently heard about one of the latest lawsuits. And it happened because this woman was outside of a bar with a friend, and the friend was trying to impress her. It's like, hey, I know this famous person. Look, I'll get them on FaceTime. And got P Diddy on FaceTime. And apparently, this is all alleged, of course, she was not very impressed because she thought that he had a hand in killing Tupac. She's not alone. Even Tupac's family is reopening a legal investigation and digging into details a lot deeper. And there are rumblings in the underground that LAPD officers were on P Diddy's payroll around that time. And that there was a mole who was trying to uncover the details of Tupac's death and who also worked in LAPD and was bringing this to light, and then suddenly found himself fired. But before he was fired, just by asking questions to his superiors and asking around about the details about the death, and don't quote me verbatim, I haven't studied this completely. Just a little side story for you if you don't know this. He was given a picture of a toilet and a pipe, as if the pipe was going all the way down the walls to the sewer, and there was a little arrow, in the middle of the pipe that said, "You are here," indicating that this person was being flushed down the toilet to the sewer. And then he was fired. He actually continued this casework and tried to bring justice to the entire situation. But I don't believe he ever really regained any semblance of credibility. And others have also thought that it was P Diddy, but apparently this random woman standing outside of a bar over FaceTime with a newish friend, just her saying that he had anything to do with it was so insulting that he told her she would regret it. And then a month later, he made sure she regretted it. And the manner in which the details of that evening unfolded is horrifying. It is genuinely like a horror film. And it was so brutal, with multiple people, including her friend, inanimate objects, guns, threatening her life, drugging her. I mean, it was absolutely mind-boggling. And then threatening to traffic her if she didn't cooperate. And in the end, saying, here's some money, say it was consensual because you're one of our hired workers. So this story, as well as some other stories where P Diddy just happened to be at an event, went to the back room, saw a competitor, and forced himself on this competitor before the show started, before whatever event started, like in a broom closet with his bodyguard standing outside. Story after story after story, it makes it seem like this is an individual who had a hungry ghost inside of him, where he couldn't even just walk 50 yards without assaulting somebody in an adult manner, or dropping his pants and doing lewd things in the corner. It's remarkable because when we say that people like this have no limits, what we're saying is that they actually have no limits. And what that means is that the depth of depravity, while being in positions of influence and power, means that what we are collectively creating without our awareness, without our understanding, is a series of underground tunnels which are rumored to be moving children from his property to question mark. And when we start to ask ourselves if that's possible, we have to ask ourselves, does he have a hungry ghost? Because if he does, there are no limits. And what I have found in working with people, and I've worked with a couple of people who have had hungry ghost phenotypes, is that they can be rather fragmented. So very often, people like this don't advertise that they have a roaring sex addiction or a roaring drug addiction. But the closer you get to them, the more you find out. And sometimes these people, actually, I would say all the time, they are held hostage by their own desires. This is what I believe people in religion, like Buddhists, will say, that the desire is the problem, and that we need to gain mastery over the desire. And what I have found is that when we are unconscious, we are a walking script and program. And we don't understand that we can condition our nervous system and our preferences and our drives. We don't understand that we have that power. And as a result, we slip into these behavioral sequences, which then we become helpless to, because it's like scratching an itch. And the more you scratch it, the more it feels good, but the more it itches. But if you knew in the beginning that you were wiring your brain, wiring your nervous system, and all you had to do was to stop actually scratching, or to replace it or redirect it, or to rewire your sensory system, or to use transhumanism implants that actually take over the structure of those circuits and make them disappear, kind of like naltrexone for alcoholics and also opiate users. It breaks the connections. If you understood that your machinery was hackable in the worst way and the best way, and you were given that power. Now, it's one thing if that power is taken from you, and if darkness is imposed on top of you. That, I believe, would be a violation of free will and autonomy and sovereignty. But I don't make the rules here, so that I think would be worthwhile to be reviewed by a committee for potential crimes against humanity. Because if your circuitry was hacked without your knowledge, your awareness, and you were kept ignorant about your ability to do anything, and you were enslaved by these, quote, desires. Like, I just recently watched a TikTok about how the Catholic Church is settling the largest settlement to sexual abuse victims in history. And I can't even remember what the amount was, but it was insane. It was, I think, over $1 billion. I can't remember. It might have been more. I remember 808, but I don't remember the details. But it was for more than 1,000, if not 1,200 victims were getting payments because there were cover-ups and things of that nature. And what if the Catholic priests were actually being imposed upon, almost as though their desires were not coming from them? Their hungry ghost was given to them as a way to control them, as a way to keep them under somebody's thumb. Because what we see as tools of oppression, particularly in the Diddy circle and Epstein circle, is that controlling people with deviant sexual desires is a surefire way to make sure that they fall in line. And if you give somebody sexual deviancy or desires, if you had the knowledge and the ability to do that, you would have the ability to create shame, binge cycles, and blackmail material. And that creates a perfect recipe for suppression and getting people of influence to fall in line and do your bidding. Sometimes hungry ghosts are, according to the mythology, are because something goes wrong with the death, or the person that has died isn't treated in the proper way. And so as a result, they can't pass on to the realm that they are supposed to. And other times it's because people commit evil deeds. So they actually re-manifest themselves in a different form, the fragmented consciousness with the hungry ghost, which I think is cruel to whomever is rezzing around them. It's not just punishment for the person with the hungry ghost, it's also punishment for their victims if they have victims. And that raises interesting ethical questions from the perspective of a realm designer and thinking about how we impact people's karmic cycles. Because do hungry ghost people always res with other hungry ghost people? Are there ever any victims in the hungry ghost realms? What about the children? So when we are perpetuating suffering and we are perpetuating punishment, it's important, I think, to ask these questions about what we're really doing, especially if somebody's rezzing and they don't remember their last life. Like I said, I don't make these rules. But if you don't remember, then you're rebooting another existence. So how do you ever really learn? You just have a lifetime of suffering and then create massive suffering around you. And then what? You die and do it all over again? Okay. I think we can do it better personally, but that's neither here nor there. So at some point in our evolution of consciousness, we have to become mindful. And what I have found is that those who give in to the hungry ghost experience are not really prioritizing mindfulness. In fact, sometimes they don't care. And if they do care, it's wrapped up in shame before they go down the cycle again. So it creates this perpetuating, ongoing, miserable existence where they want to be strong if they even care, and sometimes they don't care. I don't think Diddy cared, for example. Some people just go so far into that lustful desire that it becomes its own game. And the traumatizing of other beings becomes its own form of entertainment. Reading the recollection of the allegations of the woman who made that offhanded comment about P Diddy being responsible for Tupac, him saying that she was going to regret it. He took pleasure, if it's real, he took pleasure in breaking her. And now imagine that she was speaking the truth. Imagine just for a moment that he did have something to do with it. What kind of creature, what kind of creature would do something like that? When we are not mindful about our relationship to our own desire and what makes us tick, we have no sense of absolution. And what I've found is that those who are trapped in the hungry ghost cycles are actually suffering. Even if their suffering takes a different form that many people might not expect, in that the boredom that they experience, this novelty seeking, that's what creates the no limits. Because at some point they habituate to whatever level they've gotten used to of depravity, of fulfillment. And 30 minutes will pass. They need to do it all over again. But because they've already been hitting that button back in the day, scientists used to put rats in a box, the lever, and one lever might just have water, another might have like sugar water, another might have cocaine. And what the rats would do is they would go crazy for the sugar water and for the cocaine. And they would just press and press and press and press, press. And this is what hungry ghost people are like, is that they could be physically fatigued, but they just have to go, go, go. They could actually be hurting. Their sensitive areas could actually be hurting. And they will have to go again. There are others that will be so strung out on drugs or It will be like physically melting away, and they have to go again. It's its own form of hell, because the emptiness and the boredom which pervades their everyday existence at a certain point is so uncomfortable. Facing the truth about themselves is so miserable. Being alone, actually alone with themselves, without stimulation, without being able to scratch that itch, particularly if they haven't done the personal work, giving them a gift of boredom is its own form of punishment. I remember watching an interview about P Diddy from his bodyguards, one of his bodyguards, who said that he was just always on the phone, always watching something, always doing something. This is somebody that doesn't spend time meditating and being mindful. And this is what I believe is one of the characteristic signs of somebody that does have a hungry ghost attachment, is that they're always stimulating themselves in some way because they have to escape the truth of who they really are, which has been overtaken by their desire, whatever that desire is leading them towards. And it can shift and change. They can't really sit in profound silence. And ironically, that is the path out. That is actually the path to freedom. And of course, there are extremes, and everything is on a spectrum. But what I have found is that people with a hungry ghost attachment are on a journey. And very often, they don't start off on day 1 or day 2000 or year 30 necessarily, being all the way at the end of the road that they're going to be. The final destination for somebody with a hungry ghost who particularly does not have any mindfulness and does not care, actually enjoys that part of themselves and has the ample stimulation to keep them from feeling any sort of guilt, they will be some of our notorious, infamous people in society, hidden for a long time. But when it comes out, it will be so shocking. The list of atrocities will be so large. It could bury an ocean, particularly if they had any sort of influence or power or connections. So P Diddy apparently was given a key to New York. And I believe it was the commissioner, somebody there, ended up resigning. Actually, many people ended up resigning when P Diddy got arrested. Because it was rumored, again, everything is still coming to light, it was rumored that he had bought off police, not only in New York, but also in other parts of the country. Again, just rumors and allegations. So imagine that those tunnels underground are real. How deep do you think that they go? If you were doing an examination of somebody's shadow, like P Diddy's, now imagine just for a moment that he was mentored and that there was a connection, a web. That is the darkness that shall not be named. And that's why sometimes I wonder if Let's just take the Buddhist concept of reincarnating into one of the many different realms. There's human realm, there's an animal realm, hungry ghost realm. Is it possible that a realm could be converted? Like there's a critical mass of infrastructure that is taken over, or policies or systems that are corrupted. Are the realms that are laid out by these religious philosophies fixed? And what happens when a certain number of people in authority or influential positions overtake the power structures? Does the realm then convert to a hungry ghost realm? Because that's what they are manifesting on top of everybody. Or does the realm split? They descend, and everybody else ascends. Because there are rules and organizational structures in place which prevent realms from getting capsized. If you are allocated to be a human realm, then in what world is it just to be converted to a hungry ghost?